So this great model is another one of Ed Marple's models. Maybe it's most detailed, but it's the Sovereign of the Seas. A lot of stories about this model, or the ship itself. The ship was built in 1637 by Charles I. Now, the ship cost about 10 times more than was necessary for a ship of this size, mainly because of all the added gold and carving that you see on the side of the ship. Now, if you know your history, during the reign of Charles I, there was a rebellion in England, and he was actually executed by the people. And this is part of the reason why is the way he spent the people's money extravagantly on a ship like this. It was a very successful ship in battle. In those days, their main enemy were the Dutch at the time, and the Dutch were very, very much concerned about this ship. They called it the Black Devil because from a distance, that black area behind the gold seemed to be what they saw a lot of. So it was, as I say, it was very successful in a number of battles. The figurehead is quite interesting. The figurehead shows the first king of England, King Edgar, on his horse there, and what he's doing is trampling 6 or 7 of the other kings in England. Edgar was the first one to really unite all parts of England and take it under one kingdom. And he's trampling all those other kings, if you will. So the ship itself has some interesting parts on it. If you notice, there's some cannons on the deck, both here near the stern and up forward, and those cannons are facing right towards each other and towards the deck itself. Now, the purpose of those cannons was if the ship was boarded, we are told that the crew had a signal, and that signal could be used to tell them to duck, and those cannons would be fired into the boarders. Now, as far as we know, they were never used. We don't know that, but in terms of, that's the purpose of the very strange location of the cannons. This is a model that you can spend hours spending just looking for all the details, and there's just so much on it. Now, an interesting thing about ships of this age, or this era, if you notice the foremast is quite a bit forward from the mainmast. It's giving you this wide area. And what happens is that they put that foremast forward so that the wind would not be blanketed by the mainsail. So you would get plenty of wind onto the foresail as well. And that's why it's so far forward. But what's interesting about the fact that that's way up forward, the bowsprit, which comes in from up forward, as it comes into the ship, has to be off at a slight angle because it can't go directly underneath the foremast. An interesting ship that we all know about, the Mayflower, which was probably built around 1620, so the same era as the Sovereign of the Seas here. As you can see, the Mayflower would have been built the same way. The bowsprit is off at an angle. And in fact, if you go to Plymouth, Massachusetts and see the Mayflower replica, you'll see that it is truly built that way, even though it wasn't meant to do too much. Now, Ed Marple did a lot of research before he worked on a project, and his wife helped him with research as well. She spent a lot of time finding paintings and articles about the ships, and you know, in these days of internet, it wasn't that easy, although Ed died in 1993, and as I say, they did a lot of the research. His wife helped him. But over in this corner, we have a painting that actually has a picture of the same ship. And the ship, it doesn't quite look the same, but Ed used this painting and a number of other paintings that show this ship to decide exactly where to move some of the parts and how to do some of the rigging and that sort of thing. Oh, by the way, Ed Marple, in working from plans, he was able to purchase the plans for most of these older English ships right from the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich, England. And the museum actually has those plans in our storeroom now. So he did his best in being as accurate as possible.